All right, so this presentation basically started as me wanted to answer some questions about the website I built. I wanted to know if it would make sense to localize it for at least some languages and to get better traffic and better revenue from it. So as I was thinking about that, I decided, well, let's just build build a test website and see how localization affects traffic and revenue. So, and eventually I decided that it would be good just to put those questions in simple presentation and have it here. So, the questions that I wanted to answer would be like, do we need to localize a web resource when we have one? And if we do, how we decide what languages we localize the resource into? Because we obviously cannot localize it in every possible language there is there. So we need to have some kind of way to choose a language and go from there. And I have obviously an example that I built. If you look at the table here, you can see that the internet users by languages are not all just English. If you build your website for one language, even if it is English, you will get at most 25% of the people searching for your stuff. So you will lose 3/4 in the best case scenario. Which means that not localizing often is not an option. It is an option, but you will obviously lose traffic to your website and revenue potentially. Also, if you look at the percentage of websites and what languages they exist, we can see that 55, more than half, is in English, which means that if you're building a web resource in English, you're basically competing with 50% of everything that is there, and it's even less than 25% that the English-speaking internet users search for. So it is like, by looking at the two tables, it is fairly obvious, at least to me, that you need to localize to improve your odds of getting decent traffic and so if we assume that we go to the choosing the language thing, and I'm sure there are many ways of doing it, but so the 4 ones are fairly obvious. 4 not ways, but like concerns you need to look at, right? So the simplest one, you can look at the first table over here, right? And you see that, well, if your website is not in English, you might want to put it there. Or the next one would be the Chinese language in popularity. So you can basically go by that table and figure, okay, so I'll just try that approach and see how that works, right? On the other hand, you can also look at that table and see that, okay, what language is not represented as well as others. And if it's not, then maybe if I localize my website into that language, I have a higher chance of getting decent traffic from it. And again, Chinese language seems like to be the winner from that respect. The third thing that is the most important actually is the content domain. If whatever you localize into, you have to make sure that this domain is going to be interesting for the countries and for the people who speak in that language. Like, for example, in my test website, the main topic is American last name, and it's natural to assume that it will be popular in the countries in Americas, and probably that's all. Right. But you never know. And of course, you need to take into account the RPM for the locations where you expect your language to be most useful. Like, it's just in some countries the quality of life is low, salaries are low, so they just don't sell too much. So even though you get the good traffic, you might not get any revenue from it. So you might not want to localize into those just because of that reason. So the experiment. It's a simple website with a lot of USA Census data, not a lot of words, and that's how it looks like basically. It's not obviously the whole website, it's just a couple of pages that pretty much represent the majority of it though. So as you can see, it's just a few sentences, and you have data about particular names. What did we do? I took this website and localized it into 8 additional languages: Spanish, French, German, Russian, Japanese, simplified Chinese, Korean, and Portuguese. I went by the main table, by the language popularity table, just because I just wanted to start with something, and that seemed like a reasonable approach. And because I could translate Russian too, by myself usually. And all I did, I just did the translation, and that's all. I'm primarily concerned with basically how the search engines would pick up the things.
Question?
Yes, sir.
So how did you do the translation? Did you just use like Google Translate or something about it?
Pretty much, yes. So the specific of this website, that's why I took it. It's not a lot of words. It's just like, it has basically 5 big sentences and then 1 or 2 word sentence. So Google Translator worked fine, and then I just took, like, you know, the resource files, whatever I had, I sent it to my friends, and they verified it, and that's...
So you had native speakers actually look at it to make sure
Yes,
it's pretty close?
yes.
Okay.
Pretty much all of them. So I got corrections on all of them except for Korean and Chinese. For those 2, for some reason, they said it's good enough. Just good enough. Surprisingly, I got like tons of corrections on Japanese and what else? On Spanish, not so much, but like German, I got corrections. But like,
Question?
yes, sir.
When you get these corrections back from the individuals, you don't speak those other languages, so how do you rewrite your text?
Well, I sent them a file with, you know, this is the English statement, this is what I think the Japanese sentence looks like. They look at it and say, okay, so that one looks good, that one, and that sentence should be that. So I take what they corrected, find the English sentence in my code, and move the correct statement to there. So it wasn't too much work, to tell the truth. Again, it's not, I think overall I had like 40 or 50 short sentences for the whole website per language. All right, so then I waited for 2 months. Traffic stopped growing and became stable. I waited for 1 more month and measured the traffic numbers for that month. That's basically all I did with that experiment. And this is what I got. So on the y-axis, we have the percentage of traffic or revenue increase due to a particular language. On the X, we have all the languages which is PT Portuguese, S Spanish, J Japanese, FR French, ZH Simplified Chinese, DE German, KO Korean, and RE Russian. And we have two types of blue and red sticks, right? One is the revenue boost I got from a particular language, and the other one is the traffic boost, the red one. It was pretty much what I expected in many ways, but not everywhere. Like, let's just start from left and go to the right.
Question,
Yes, sir.
was this for the last name site?
Yes.
What, you say a revenue boost, what were you selling that was associated with?
Oh. You can't see it quite clearly because I removed it, but there is an advertisement box there.
Oh, okay.
Right,
So you were making money off the ad?
Right, right,
Okay,
right.
gotcha.
And it's a good thing that you asked. I forgot to mention it. Basically, when you localize, your web resource, it's like if you're a local company in some country and you have an office in another country, I mean, you have to localize for the both locales. There's an option about that, right? So I'm not concerned about those cases. I'm concerned about the cases where you have general resource that,
Available to everyone.
right, or at least to some slice of the globe. Like, again, like some information resource, it's probably the best example of that. And more often than not, such resources are monetized by advertisement, really. So, let's go with Portuguese, right? The traffic increase was 130%, which was, I mean, great, and I totally understand why, because, well, the domain matched completely. It's there in America, so they were probably hitting a lot of keywords like that. I'm not quite sure they were the right keywords for them, because what I have on the website was United States specific, but they were finding it, and I think they were finding something they liked. There was a similar story with Spanish. Although Spanish language is more popular than Portuguese, they got less of the traffic increase. I don't know what to attribute to that, maybe just because there are other resources in Spanish and there are not that many resources in Portuguese. I don't know. So, but that's I expected them, that those two languages to be high. The GA, the Japanese language, I was not expected to get much out of it, but instead I got like 90% increase for that language. I don't know why. I wish I knew, but I don't.
But nobody clicked on ads?
Well, yes, that's another mystery, right? So I have two mysteries of the Japanese locale. They brought in a lot of traffic, but they got no ads. So I suppose there's something I just don't know how they, place the ads, or.
Were the ads localized as well?
Well, it's up to Google. I use AdSense, so I'm sure they do that.
I wonder if they just failed to localize the ads for Japan or something.
That would be very surprising, because they localize it for Russia, I know for sure that. So, no, they're really good. I'm pretty sure they localize it. But there is something I didn't do right. I mean, not like I didn't do right, but there's something else that needs to be done in order to get monetization out of this Japanese traffic. The French was I was slightly surprised, just because, again, I didn't expect to get too much of it because they're not really American. But on the other hand, I'm not surprised that I got some increase, because there are some people in Canada that have French, and there are lots of French names in the United States as well still. So yeah, it's all right. What I was surprised in that respect was the German traffic, which I would think, be equal in that regard to the French, but somehow it didn't grow at all. My greatest,
Just have a quick question.
Sure.
Particularly concerning Japanese thing. Are you using Unicode or code pages for the localization? Because Japanese is the only multi-byte character set that you have in a letter.
UTF-8.
Oh, Chinese too, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's UTF-8.
It seems like both of those.
So Unicode, yeah.
And Korean.
So UTF-8, so it's Unicode.
Okay.
About Japanese, not Japanese, the Chinese thing. So I hoped it would grow just like crazy because it's the biggest number of users out there basically. But it didn't. It did grow somewhat. What I did notice about the Chinese traffic